Hello, St. Mark's. This is Advent. Oh, look, look. Um, Hi, St. Mark's. This is Advent 3, and I picked to do the talk this week because at the time of being asked, Advent 3 seemed like a very long time away. It was the furthest one I could pick, so that's why I picked it, because I thought by then I'll probably be wise. And, well, here we are. Not wise. So, I googled what Advent 3, what's the third week in Advent all about? If you are lighting the third candle on the Advent wreath, what does the third one represent? And Google tells me that it represents joy. Now, I'm not very wise. I want to caveat everything I'm saying now with please know that I know very little about the history or about the theology. Advent 3 is about joy. I know a little bit about joy, so I kind of felt like, oh, phew, we're within my comfort zone here, because joy is something that I would say is my kind of like standard operating mode. Most people that know me know that after coffee, generally, that's my default setting. My memory of all events that have happened tend to be with a kind of positive tilt. I do tend to view the world with joy. I recognise that it's intensely irritating for a lot of people. But like Josh said when he found the week that he was going to be talking on, I looked at the, having to talk about joy, and I was thinking, that sounds great, but actually the irony is, of late, joy isn't really how I've been operating. If you think about if any of you have seen the movie Inside Out, where you've got the caricatures of joy, who's like, springy, bouncing around everywhere, that kind of character that I would say would usually be who I am. Recently, behind closed doors, I've been much more similar to the sadness character, the one that's just kind of everything's awful, and just moping and spending a lot of time lying down under a blanket on the sofa. And there's nothing wrong with that sometimes. So I was in one of these modes lately. I was lying down on the sofa, I was under a blanket, and I know that like if my kids do this, I'm always like, are you languishing? And then we're like, we need fresh air, I kind of like get them into a different state. But this was me, so I was languishing, and I was fully enjoying it. And Emily said to me, Mum, are you languishing? And I said, yes, actually I am. Can you please bring me my phone so that I can do it properly and doom scroll at the same time? So she did. She brought me my phone. And the thing with doom scrolling, maybe you don't know how this works. If you're a child or a teenager, do not try this at home. But let me just explain how it works. So you identify an emotion that's uncomfortable inside you, like grief or just discomfort or unhappiness. Anyway, you lie to yourself about it. You find a media device, and you look at the news, or you look at social media, or the killer, you look at Twitter, and you find something that kind of matches those disturbing feelings, and then you blame those feelings that you already had before on the thing that you're reading. You become appropriately outraged by it, And then you spread it by going, I can't believe it. This is atrocious what's happened in the world. And then you just, spread it around. So this is kind of what I was doing. I was in my state of everything's awful. And so I picked up Instagram and I was going to search for something even more atrocious that I could share it with other people. And but because of my previous propensity to joy, the algorithms of Instagram, when I press search, give me babies and ballet dancers. Let me just prove it. Babies and ballet dancers. This was not helping my mission to feel miserable. So I just want to show you this because it's really funny every time. Look. Da, 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 da. Babies, ballet dancers. Sometimes you get a combination of the two, which is just wicked. Anyway, babies and ballet dancers. So I clicked on a baby. And this little baby was having its hair washed. So, I mean, it's just adorable. Really calm. It's all snuggled up. It's having its hair washed under lukewarm water. There was another baby that was dressed as Elmo. I know some of you will have seen this. Dressed as Elmo, and it didn't recognise itself in the mirror. It thought it was Elmo. And it's just one of those things. Babies are magical. Before long, I'm sitting up and I'm chuckling and I'm gathering people around to say, come and look at this baby. This one's bum shuffling in an interesting way or something. And it occurred to me that babies are, in general, joy bringers. I mean, they also bring chaos. They bring fear, sleeplessness, all the rest of the stuff. But they're packaged in this kind of wobbly, vulnerable body. And it just brings us joy. It brings us joy to be around a baby most of the time. Sometimes they scream and shout a lot. And it got me thinking what it must have been like for Mary and Joseph having this tiny, little, wobbly, vulnerable saviour that they knew was supposed to be the Messiah. They were waiting expectantly on this thing that was going to come and take them out of the turmoil they were living in, and they were given a baby. And babies are great at lots of things, like, making loud noises and pooing. Sometimes they're really good at burping, but they're not great at changing governments, They're not great at... I wonder if they kind of expected, well, this is a supernatural baby. He's going to come down and say, right, guys, everyone gather round. First of all, I'm a talking baby. Didn't see that coming. Second of all, I have a plan. That's probably not what happened. Or if it is, it didn't make it into the Bible. So I'm thinking maybe that's not really what happened. And I wonder if that was a little bit like, did he meet their expectations? I mean, I know the hymn says no crying he makes. I fully doubt that that's what happened. I reckon that Jesus made quite a lot of noise, because how else do you communicate? That's what babies do. So Jesus was just this wobbly ball of poo and chaos, just like all the other babies that we know. And that's what God chose to send to the earth, to save it. So he could have sent a Jesus having done a fair amount of leadership training and, warrior stuff. He could have come charging down in his special outfit and saved the world with a good shield or something. But it's not what happened. Sent him as a baby. Now, let's think about what we need when we're thinking, when I'm praying, when I'm thinking, oh, everything is disastrous. And it's just, what I'm praying for is God to just come. Can you just sort it out? Can you just fix it? Can you just take this off of me so I don't have to be a grown-up about this? Can you just fix it, please? And I wonder if the kind of prayers that Mary and Joseph might have said might have been similar at that time when everything was dangerous. They're in political turmoil. There's super rich and the very, very poor. They were definitely not in the first category. And they were probably afraid. So they must have prayed. Well, I wonder if they prayed, can you just come and take this? Can you just fix this? And God's like, yeah. Have a baby. And they must have been like, well, that's not, now I have to look after it. And in this situation, I have to be the grown-up and I have to feed and care for this Messiah. So I think it's an interesting choice that God chose to send something so vulnerable, so completely helpless, couldn't walk, couldn't really do anything for himself, probably couldn't burp without being patted. You know, and it's like, that's what God chose. He chose to be that vulnerable with us. And if any of you have been near to friends, you'll know that having a baby is dangerous. Carrying a baby is dangerous. That babies, sometimes they're not all that robust. Especially ones that are born outside of a decent healthcare system in a barn. That must have been, I can't imagine the worry that you'd have. So it just strikes me that God deliberately chose to put himself in a very precarious situation. And I think what he's doing there is modelling vulnerability. The fact that he was prepared to be so exposed and also prepared to lean on human beings, other people, for his very survival. He completely relied on the adults around him to raise him, to nurture him. I was reading a book, it turns out I read it years ago and completely forgot. But it must have been in there somewhere because these are the thoughts that I've been having. And this is a book by Scott Erickson called Honest Advent, which I read 2 years ago and then completely forgot. So it's all like, it's cool, it's brand new information. So it says this: what does it say about a God who's willing to be this vulnerable with us, who's willing to be attached by a placenta for nourishment and life to its own creation, who's willing to wait and grow in the human womb, who's willing to be fearfully and wonderfully made just like we are? Any real connection involves vulnerability because it takes the act of making oneself open, to truly be known. God came to us floating in embryonic fluid, slowly forming and taking shape. Embedded in the uterine wall of a Middle Eastern teenaged woman, it trusted to care for its fragile knitting process. What it says about a God who's willing to be this vulnerable is that God is willing to open itself up to deeply connect with us. The real question is, are we willing to do the same? May you experience grace embedded in your own hidden vulnerabilities, and may you let that symbiotic mystery fuel your Advent wonder.